In this video, I'm going to show you something you never see. 3 real-world data pipelines that huge companies use in their daily business, as well as the automation and orchestration tool these pipelines are running on. This is a bit of a longer video, so I put jump marks below for you if you want to, for instance, head on straight to the real-world data pipelines. So have fun and let's get into it. First, I'd like to thank Stonebranch for giving me the opportunity to show you these pipelines. As I said, Stonebranch is a workflow automation platform used by many large companies in banking, in insurance, car companies, telecommunication, healthcare, and more. They showed me around their platform and set up a demo environment with the pipelines that I can show you. If you want to see even more examples, then head over to Stonebranch's success stories page that I linked you in the description below. They have many interesting success stories here, like for instance the one from BP, where they show you in detail what was the problem, how did they solve it, and some results. It's really interesting. There's also an in-depth video below here, 49 minutes. So their success story section is also very interesting to get an idea of what are companies actually doing with workflow automation and orchestration. But before we get into the pipelines that use AWS, GCP, SAP, Databricks, Snowflake, SQL databases, and more, let's talk quickly about the architecture of Stonebranch and why they build it this way. So this is a slide they showed me that I really liked, so I'm going to explain this to you with this slide as well. There are basically 3 layers: the execute layer, the automate layer, and the operate layer. And the interesting part here is, let's start with the execute layer, that you have agent-based execution or agentless execution. Now, agent-based is what it sounds like. You install an agent somewhere and then this agent communicates here with the controller that runs in another layer and basically takes tasks from the controller to do. Agentless, this is stuff like here JDBC or SSH or the typical REST APIs that are called, that a lot of platforms have. Like here are a lot of platforms named: Azure, SAP, Oracle, IBM, Cloudera, Salesforce, AWS, Informatica, and so on. They all have APIs or agentless communications that the platform can use. Now let's talk quickly about agents and agentless. Why is this so important? When you first hear about this, you think agents, this sounds very old school, but it's actually a necessity very often in large companies, because what these companies have a firewall. And the thing with this firewall is, this firewall only allows outside connections. This does not allow connections to the inside, right? So it's going to block connections. How does this work with the controller? Now, if it's a REST API, this is very straightforward. The controller usually can connect to this REST API, because what they do is they open up the firewall just for these HTTP 443 connections, because you are going to have an authentication here and it's going to be very straightforward. This is very often not a problem. The problem comes, let's say you want to connect here to a Linux server and you want to execute something on the Linux server. This will not work because, again, what the firewall is going to do is it's going to block the access here, and then this will not work. So what are you going to do? You're going to install an agent on the platform. All this agent does is the agent is going to connect outside to the controller. So it's going to open up a connection to the controller from inside to outside. This is what's going to go through the firewall, and then the controller is then later. Once this connection is established, then able to connect with the agent, and the agent is going to connect to your server and it's going to execute the stuff. So this is why the concept of having agents is super important, especially in large corporations, because they're not going to open up the firewall for you, except maybe for some HTTP calls to REST services. Let's talk about the controllers. Now, the cool thing here is the controllers. You can actually set up multiple stages of the controllers. Like if you have a development, a test, and a production stage, you can set up multiple controllers. And then basically, once the development is done here, you would bundle your workflows and promote them to the next stage, to the next controller. There you're going to do the testing, and that this controller would then go into production. And so you can have a type of CI/CD. Of course, on top of there's the UI we're going to look at. There's also web services, so this can be called via web service, and there's a CLI. Now, okay, enough talking, let's get into the pipelines. All right, let's look at the UI. And the UI is pretty straightforward. When you start, you have a dashboard where you see the task instances by status. Of course, right now nothing's running, where you're seeing your system details of the controller, agent status, and so on. Now, there are only a few concepts that are important here. One concept is the concept of tasks. Tasks are the things that are actually executing stuff on your systems. And there are a bunch of tasks that are configured here for our example, but you can see it as there are standard tasks here on the left, like Linux tasks, Windows tasks, file transfer tasks, SQL tasks, email tasks that you send out an email, or you have stuff from integrations. That could be an AWS Glue tasks, or this could be a Synapse tasks, OpenShift, Kubernetes, and so on. If something is missing, what people can do is they can go in here, and then the integration hub actually lets you search for other integrations. Let's say you don't have Airflow. Then you can go and search for the Airflow integration and set this up for your system, where you can here trigger DAG runs, read DAG information, and so on. So pretty straightforward, pretty cool. And then how this works is you can either visualize all tasks, or you can then go into, let's say we have an integration here, Databricks tasks, and then you see all the Databricks tasks that are configured. Again, this is a very straightforward interface. You have a task. How is this task configured? Then you can see either on the right here, or you can pop it out, and then you see exactly how this task is configured and how the access is done to the platform, and so on. Another thing about Stonebranch that I find very, very useful is how you can transfer data from one source to the other. For instance, from one cloud, from AWS to GCP or to Azure, because that all happens in memory. You don't need to have a storage in between, and data gets streamed through. Also, that if data is very big, the data can be chunked into smaller size and then sent in parallel over the cloud to the other destination. So that is a very, very useful feature. And we're going to see this in many of these pipelines where the data needs to fan out. So we're going to check that out as well. Then you have triggers, and triggers is a really cool thing, because triggers is not just the typical triggers that you have, for instance, on Airflow or many other platforms. There are simple cron triggers. You can go really deep here. Like you can set up a trigger for this is going to be the first business day in the month, and it's going to allow you to have a lot of variety in this. So this is going to start 9 o'clock every first business day of the month. So it's going to give you a lot of freedom. You can also then go in here and say list qualifying times, and then it's going to show you here all the times when this thing is going to run. Now, of course, starting your workflows based on a schedule is a very traditional way. What you nowadays want to do almost all the time is you want to react on events. You want to have your workflow started event driven. And you can do that with Stonebranch as well. So instead of using a trigger, you would look for task monitors or agent file monitors. Basically, these file monitors look if a folder on a drive is changing, and if there's a new file, and then your workflow starts. You could look for system variables like disk space available, CPU resources, and so on. Our email monitors, if a new email comes in, then the workflow starts. Now, one thing with these is very often that you have polling. That means with polling, basically you always ask the other side, is there something new? Like in this case, this is on the left is Stonebranch, and on the right side is a simple notification service, a message queue of AWS, right? So you would ask once, is there new data in the message queue? No. You would ask another time, twice. Is there new data? No. Or then n times as long as there's a new message. The problem with this is that you're going to do a lot of requests or a lot of polls and nothing is happening. So you're wasting bandwidth, you're wasting communication. Now what you can do with Stonebranch is you can set webhooks. And the cool thing with webhooks, they're going over HTTPS, is that you can tell basically your message queue, okay, inform me when something new is happening, and you make that connection once. Then once a new message is coming in, it's going to tell you, okay, here's some new data, here's the new message. And you can basically use any tool here that is able to be connected via webhook and integrate this into your event-driven pipelines. We're going to see this later when we go here to universal monitors, how this is called, and then we have webhooks, for instance, here that look into AWS SNS messages. And these are in our example pipelines. Now, tasks, triggers, what's missing? Missing are the workflows. You go in workflows, and workflows are exactly what we think they are. Let's edit quickly a workflow, and then this is a typical workflow, and this is one of the workflows I'm going to show you now. So let's look at the first example. They call this a data ops example. And this is a live example from a real company and what they are doing. When we just glance over this, there are a lot of tools in this. It's not like we have in education very often, or people talk about very often, just, we have one service and we send data from here and there and trigger this and that. Here's SAP. There's a SQL database. There is some file transfer. Here's an improvement stage where somebody actually has to approve this. S3, blob storage. We have Snowflake. We have Tableau. We have Informatica, Databricks. These are huge pipelines, as you can see, and they span over multiple tools, over multiple platforms, which is really, really cool. Now let's get into this. How does this look? What are they doing here? So you could, for instance, monitor for a new seller in the system and then take the SAP service orders, basically extract data from SQL servers, then check, do I have enough on my agent? Do I have enough space for the staging files? The thing is, with SAP, you only can work with files. SAP cannot send data straight forward somewhere, so you need to have staging area. What you're going to do is you're going to check, is the staging space enough? Then put this into this staging space and do a file transfer. And it has here 2 file transfers, and from there's the thing with a proof stage. So the upload to the service here, to the S3 or to the blob storage in Azure, is going to happen only with the file transfer once there's an approved service order. You can look at this and can then check this out, say, okay, what actions are here? There's an action required. And then you can scroll down, and as you can see here, this is, for instance, a Microsoft Teams action that is required. So this is going to send out a message through Teams, and somebody has to approve this. Then the whole process is going to continue. Then the service orders are going to be uploaded in S3, are going to be uploaded in blob storage. I'm not 100% sure why they do this both, but that's how they do it. Then, for instance, once they are there, you have Informatica for the data validation. So you validate the data that is now in these stores. Is the data correct? Is the data missing? And so on and so on. And from there, you then fan out. One part goes to Snowflake. Are the tables ready for the service orders? Can they receive the data? Then you would load the data from the S3 bucket and here refresh a Tableau dashboard. Very straightforward. This goes through Snowflake. This could also then the other way, this once the data is validated, this will go towards Azure Data Factory and then bring this into, load this into Databricks. Check if the cluster is running, if not, start the cluster and then start the Databricks notebook job. And that notebook job is going to process the data, refresh a Power BI dashboard. So this way you bring your data from a SAP service and from a local database that is most likely running on-prem into a staging space, and then you approve the data gets sent, the data gets sent onto S3, onto the blob storage, validated, and then put into the different systems for analysis, basically. And they have this actually here, they say here, right, for the service orders apart and also for a superstore. Right? So I'm guessing the superstore part is like a part that has all historical data, and most likely this part below is a part of Snowflake that only has current data in it. Now let's look at the next one. Let's go back into workflows and let's look at the pipeline SAP commission. What this is a pipeline that is from a company where people are selling devices, where sellers are selling devices, and then it's going to generate or calculate the commission that people have. Now, this is going to take some sales data here, like monitor for new sellers, or there's a webhook for actually getting sales data, which is in this case, if you look at it and you scroll down here a bit, this is actually looking for a simple notification service message from AWS, right? So there's a new seller coming in, download the sales data from or for this seller, then transfer the seller data to SAP. Then the data is in SAP, and then it's going to go and it's going to calculate some bonus models in SAP, run a commission run every Wednesday, and then run here a daily commissions, go into the monthly commission run, and then inform the SAP team and approve the commission report. Okay? And then this is going to promote the bundle somewhere. It's going to take the data, download the data, Amazon S3 data source, and this is going to download the data from there, transform the data to SAP from S3. Again, this is also something where Stonebranch told me they are very, very good at transferring data from one place to the other, because they are able to chunk the data, to use the large files, make small chunks out of them, and then very efficiently send them away. Again, and then it's going to go here. Then we can look here. This is an email, so this most likely will tell us here in the configuration. When we scroll down, this has some emails connections. Here's the body of the email that's going to be sent out. Following report attached, SAP report, verify and approve the report through your dashboard. And they're going to here approve the report, actions required. This is through Slack approval. And then this is going to go and this is going to promote the bundle to the target. I'm not sure where this is going, but as you can see, this is a web service detail. This is going to go through a REST API somewhere. This is how that's done. Here's another data pipeline that I find very interesting, but it's quite complicated. So I just want to go over a few bits, because this actually has a mainframe in it, right? So what they're doing the exact same thing. They're going to, with a webhook, look for sales data in a message queue from AWS. And once it's there, once the message is there, they're going to check the staging space here. They're going to check, is in my EC2, do I have enough memory available? This is here 200 gigabytes. And then if there's not enough data available, what they're going to do is they are going to attach with a Terraform template here, more storage here to the EC2 instance. They're going to add EBS volumes to that instance for the virus scan. Then they're going to transfer the sales data from the mainframe onto that instance. do the virus scan and then either put this into quarantine and create a ticket that there's a virus detected, or they're going to start transferring the data into the data lake. And then basically this takes then the data from different sources and it's going to all store this into S3. From S3, what they're doing is they're going here into Redshift, into an ETL job with AWS Glue, and then put the data into SQL databases and refresh a data set for Power BI that is in Redshift here. They're also doing this on SAP. We saw this again. SAP, the seller data is going to land in SAP. This is going to start a SAP bonus model calculation. And from there, this is going to then do commission runs, which calculate the commissions for the people who sell the stuff. Can you see what I mean? These are very interesting pipelines because they are not just on one platform. They're not just with a few tools. These are like, we had mainframes in there. We had different types of data warehouses or analytical data stores in there. We had Informatica for data validation. Like, I find this very, very interesting, and you usually see this nowhere. This information is nowhere. You know that the platforms very often have connectors, but how does this fit together? And the data is coming from, like in this example, from multiple sources, and it's going to all go into S3, get together, and then get munched together and get calculated, and then put into a data warehouse at the end, or SQL databases where you're seeing the data, seeing the results. And SAP is going to do a calculation run for the commission of the people. I mean, and all in one pipeline. You can all see this in one pipeline. Of course, this is a huge pipeline, but yeah. Now, how does this look if we actually start a pipeline? I'm going to show this to you next. Let's start a workflow. Let's look at this. Because, of course, these large workflows I couldn't start. These were just copied in. Right? They don't have the connection to the systems, and also they don't want me to mess up the customer systems. So this is a workflow they created for me, this demo workflow. And this basically has a bunch of stuff in there. I don't know if this really makes sense. This has a file monitor. This has a data transfer, S3 data lake to Azure data lake. This has some SAP modules in there, a retrieval of data from SQL, then a sleep timer, and some Linux jobs that are running here. Let's start this. We can trigger this manually. We'll just go in here and we say launch workflow, launch the workflow. And now when we go back to the dashboard here, we can refresh and we can see here, these jobs are running, these jobs are waiting. We can also go here, activity, and start our activity monitor. Now this shows the last 48 hours. Let's just here, this is the day, last 30 minutes, and you can see, okay, what is actually running, what is stopping here. This all belongs to the demo workflow. So Linux jobs, file monitor, SAP bonus models, these things are waiting or running. And yeah, you can also do filter here. Let's say you only want to see the type of workflow. You can click here and then you would only see the workflow. But this is one way of doing this. The other way is actually then clicking here on the workflow. Where's the workflow? Here. And then show view workflow. And then you are going to see in the workflow. This is a bit, let me make this a bit bigger. So success, running here, waiting. So you can see each individual step. If a pipeline is hung up at some point, you can go in, or you could also say, okay, now here, as they said, I can force finish here, this, for instance, and then this is finished, and then these jobs are going to be done, right? So you could go and you could say, okay, let's skip over steps, let's finish steps. It's really cool as a workflow monitor where you see the individual steps. Let's start this again. See, resource wait, running. These are all waiting. So pretty cool. Dashboard is showing us this. So we can, and the cool thing is we can always click and we'll see what's running right now. What are we taking away from this? Real-world workflows are complicated, unlike what we've often shown in courses. They use many different tools on a wide variety of platforms, each one with its own quirks and features, as you know. That's why I always tell you that just doing a single course, just learning a single tool as a data engineer is not enough. You need to have a wide variety of knowledge. That's also why I put so much effort into teaching so many tools in my Data Engineering Academy. Personally, I like the option to create workflows visually. I'm a visual person and I like this a lot. I like the way of monitoring the workflows where you can go into the workflow and you see this one is running, this one is waiting, this one is finished. And that is really cool. Especially the agent model and the advanced way of scheduling tasks is, in my opinion, something that makes Stonebranch very valuable, especially for larger corporations. The agent model, because they usually have very complicated infrastructures set up on the cloud, on-prem, with a lot of rules to these, where you cannot access data from one zone to the other, where you have firewalls that block incoming traffic. That is pretty standard. So the agent model, super cool. Scheduling tasks, because with these larger corporations, they very often have specific rules, like we've seen these runs for commissions that only happen on specific dates, specific days. This is very, very interesting and very important. So I think this is where they have really a step up compared to other platforms. Another thing that we have seen in these workflows very often was transferring data from a source to one or multiple other cloud destinations. That is a super cool feature, and for engineers like me, that is very, very helpful, because very often you need to fan out for different processing purposes, for different goals that people want to solve. So doing this efficiently without having an intermediate storage, 60 sources that you can just say, okay, I'm going to take the source, put this into the destination and be done with it. It's super, super cool. What I also like is how event-driven pipelines can be created with Stonebranch, not just through monitors that you have on agents or where you monitor emails, but that you can use webhooks. You have a custom webhook with any tool that supports webhooks, and then you can use that tool to actually trigger your pipelines, your workflows. Could the UI be improved? Yeah, sure. But they told me that they're coming out with a new UI soon, which will improve a lot of stuff. I'll be keeping an eye out for these changes. What's your takeaway from seeing these workflows, these pipelines, and from experiencing the Stonebranch platform? I'm very interested in this, so let me know in the comments what you think. Again, check out the links in the description of the video to learn more about Stonebranch and about the success stories and so on. And then see you in the next video. Bye.